Hello, guys. Welcome back to Faith Movies. Today's movie recap will be a drama and history movie from 2013 called Book of Daniel. Warning, there are spoilers ahead. The movie starts with Daniel walking alone in a desolate area. He pauses to kneel and pray, asking God to bring back Jerusalem's former greatness after its destruction during the time of prophet Jeremiah. Suddenly, he feels a sword against his neck, and more guards quickly surround him. Among them is the current king of Babylon, Cyrus, whom Daniel recognizes and praises for his achievements. Confused, Cyrus helps Daniel up and inquires about his identity. Daniel introduces himself, and Cyrus realizes he is the prophet who survived the lion's den. King Cyrus then invites Daniel into his tent, where Daniel promises to share the true stories of 4 significant kings, starting with Nebuchadnezzar, the king who conquered many lands, including Jerusalem, during prophet Jeremiah's time. Nebuchadnezzar took the intellectuals, officials, soldiers, and other notable figures from Judah captive. He killed some but kept those who he thought would remain loyal, including Daniel and 3 other Hebrew priests. These priests came together to pray. Daniel reminded them that Jeremiah had prophesied they would serve Babylon for 70 years due to their sins, after which they would be freed. Soon they were called to eat. They were offered pork and other delicacies, which they refused because the food wasn't prepared according to Hebrew customs. The chef explained that he was responsible for their well-being or else he would lose his life. Daniel suggested a compromise. They would eat only vegetables and fruits for 10 days, after which the chef could see how healthy they appeared compared to others. If they didn't look better, they would eat whatever was provided. The chef agreed to the plan. After 10 days, they looked healthier and were allowed to eat whatever they wanted. After being prepared for a long time to meet the king of Babylon, they were informed that they would face the king, and if they failed, they would all be beheaded. When they appeared before the king, he asked who Daniel was, and Daniel answered well. The king then questioned Daniel, asking, "Why should I let you, a follower of my enemy, live?" Daniel explained that he had spared the lives of their people in Judah and did not kill them, even though he could have. He also mentioned that God had commanded them to serve the king. Impressed, the king declared them worthy and ordered that their names be recorded in the Book of the Wise. One day, Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had a troubling dream. He summoned all his powerful astrologers and wise men to interpret it. When they arrived, he demanded that they first tell him what he dreamt and then interpret it. They insisted he must tell them the dream first. The king then threatened that all the wise men, including Daniel and his priests, would be executed if they failed to explain his dream. Daniel requested more time, but the king demanded an answer by morning. So Daniel prayed and was ready the next day when they were brought before the king. Daniel then recounted the dream from beginning to end. Astonished, the king exclaimed, "You have done what others said was impossible." He then asked for the meaning of the dream. Daniel explained that it predicted that several kingdoms would follow, but his reign would be one of the greatest and that God would make one of the future rulers so powerful that his kingdom would be indestructible. Pleased, the king commanded that Daniel be rewarded for his great service. Later, the king erected a golden statue of himself and decreed that everyone in Babylon must bow to it when the horn sounded. However, the 3 priests who were with Daniel were caught not bowing during a worship session. The king summoned them and sentenced them to be thrown into a furnace. When the 3 priests were placed in a fire, it did not harm them, and they saw a 4th figure that looked like an angel. Astonished, the king proclaimed that their God must be very powerful to save them from his punishment, and decreed that no one should ever speak ill of the God of the 3 priests. Everything was fine until King Nebuchadnezzar had another dream. In the dream, he saw a magnificent tree with abundant fruit that fed every creature around it. Then a heavenly messenger appeared and chopped down the tree, causing all the animals that fed from it to scatter. The king sought Daniel's interpretation. Daniel explained that King Nebuchadnezzar himself was the tree, and if he failed to acknowledge the true God, he would be thrown out of his palace to live among the wild animals. The king heeded the warning from his dream, but after a year, he arrogantly boasted about his own power. Suddenly, a voice from heaven declared that his authority would be stripped away. He was then cast out and lived among the wild animals for 7 years until he finally acknowledged God. After recognizing the Most High, he heard a voice telling him to return and reclaim his kingdom. Upon his return to Babylon, he vowed to praise and glorify the Most High and encouraged his subjects to do the same. King Nebuchadnezzar lived well until his death. That was the end of the first king's story. King Cyrus looked interested and talked about how he was able to conquer Babylon when everyone else had failed. Daniel continued his narrative with the story of the second king, a foolish one. This king, Nebuchadnezzar's son, took power after his father's death. He was foolish, arrogant, and unreasonable. During a feast, he disliked the taste of the wine in his cup and demanded that the sacred golden vessels from Jerusalem be brought to him. Despite being warned by his advisors that the vessels were holy, he angrily insisted on using them. When they brought the vessels, he poured wine into them and drank. Suddenly, an inscription in a foreign language appeared on a cloth on the wall. Daniel was urgently summoned as he was the only one who could read the inscription. The king promised Daniel gold and a purple robe if he could interpret it. Daniel read the inscription and informed the king that his end was near, that he had been unreasonable, and that he would die that night, with his kingdom passing to another. The king, looking sad, ordered that Daniel be rewarded as promised, and continued the night waiting for his divine punishment. Eventually, an army led by another king stormed the palace, captured the second king, and ended his life. This marked the end of the second king's story and the start of the third king's tale. Upon meeting Daniel, the new king, Darius of Persia, pointed his sword at him and questioned why he shouldn't kill him. Daniel revealed that he was a messenger of God and had foretold Darius's arrival and his conquest of Babylon. Astonished, Darius decided to keep Daniel close as an executive in his government, recognizing Daniel's honesty and integrity, which he believed would make his rule over Babylon successful. Daniel's significant influence in the government was positive, but it also brought him envy and hatred from some officials who had been close to Darius since his days as king of Persia. Those jealous officials met secretly to plot Daniel's downfall. They tried various tactics like bribery and digging up dirt from his past, but found nothing. So they devised a cunning plan to use his devotion to God against him. They told the king that some people were worshipping the old gods of Babylon, hoping to restore the previous regime and overthrow Darius. They suggested making a law prohibiting the worship of any gods except for Darius himself to expose these individuals. The king agreed, signed the decree, and it became law. That same day, Daniel was arrested for worshiping his god and brought before the king. Darius, realizing he had been tricked, sought a way to override the law to save Daniel, but no solution was found, and Daniel was thrown into the lion's den. Miraculously, after praying to God, Daniel was unharmed by the lions. The next day, Darius, relieved to find Daniel alive, punished the councilmen who had deceived him by throwing them into the den. He then decreed that Daniel's God should be revered throughout the land. After serving under King Darius for many years, completing 70 years of service to Babylon, Daniel left and found himself in the wilderness. He knelt and prayed to God, bringing us to the beginning of the movie where he was approached by King Cyrus. Daniel then began telling the story of the fourth king. He read from a scroll that was over 150 years old, which had predicted his own meeting with King Cyrus. The prophecy was so precise that it even mentioned Cyrus by name. Impressed by this, King Cyrus embraced Daniel's God and vowed to rebuild Jerusalem, as the scroll had foretold. With this, the movie ends. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to give a thumbs up and subscribe. Your support is appreciated. Remember, Jesus loves you. Have a blessed day, and see you next time.